Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, we're breaking down the best contracts in the NBA. And at the top, we're going to do some NBA draft discussion about Reed Sheppard, Dalton Connect, and some other players that have some enormous games this weekend. So come join us.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up,
Good to
Sam?
see you.
The Kai Jones, every single time. It just makes me smile. It makes me laugh. And peek behind the curtain here, everybody, as we start 45 minutes late. Every other episode that I've ever been on, when we started late, it's 100% been Sam's fault. 100. Confirmed. Today was 100% on me. I had some stuff. I was on a Zoom call. It ran a little bit long. And this is 100% on me. So I apologize for the late start of the Game Theory podcast on Friday, March 1st.
See, I was just going to blame myself. I was going to say, look, Nathan Lyon was on 40. He's a bowler for people who don't watch
I was going to
cricket.
say, who are you talking about?
Yeah, so Nathan Lyon is like one of the best bowlers of all time in cricket, and he's never scored 50 runs as a batter in a cricket game. It'd be like somebody, like a pitcher hitting a home run, kind of. Him scoring 50 in a cricket game as a batter. So, and Nathan Lyon's like by far my best, like my favorite cricket player. He's hilarious, and just the way he plays is awesome, and it's very, very funny to me. His whole personality is very funny to me. So I wanted to watch that, but hey, if you're willing to take the blame, I'm here for it, man.
Hey, listen, you took your receipts on the Brandon Pajimski scouting report last episode or 2 episodes. Yeah. I hold my own receipts. I hold myself accountable. You also just took us like around the sports world with bowling, cricket, batting, running, school. Like, I'm like, what sport are we even talking about, Sam? Not only do I not know this guy, I still don't even know what sport he plays.
Yeah, cricket. It's all good. Cricket is a sport. It's not just a bug over here in Australia, Bryce. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today, I want to talk about a few draft guys at the top that have had some big games over the course of this week. It feels like college basketball is really starting to explode a bit more into the mainstream. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of the guys that are emerging into potential March stars right now as we get into March. And then we're going to do best contracts in the NBA. I also want to talk a little bit about the Jalen Galloway signing with the Milwaukee Bucks. He's going to sign a 2-year, 2-way. Makes total sense, and we'll talk about that momentarily. But we also have some stipulations with the best contract discussion that we'll define and everything like that. So, look, like the best contract in the NBA is whatever contract, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, like all those guys are on, right? But we've excluded them for reasons we'll talk about. Let's talk about the draft guys here at the start. So Reed Sheppard had, I think it was probably, I don't know, man. It might have been my favorite draft game. I don't know if it was the best game I've seen somebody play this season, but it was certainly my favorite. Reed Sheppard in the first 38 and a half minutes of this game against Mississippi State this week. He has like 21 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists. He only has, I think, 1 turnover in that time, maybe 2. I think he had 2, got his second one right around like the 38-minute mark. Threw kind of a shitty pass. I'm sitting there thinking like, you know what? This is like an amazing game. This is awesome. This is like exactly what I've wanted to see from Reed. Him creating on the ball more often, playing as well as he has. This is exactly what we're looking for. We want to see him play point guard a little bit more often. He played way more of like a solid point guard role in that game. Then in the last 90 seconds of this game, Reed Sheppard like blocks a shot on a closeout, drills 5 clutch free throws, hits 2 like huge buckets, like one a jumper, one a layup, and then nails a game winner floater after Josh Hubbard hits a shot to take the lead for Mississippi State. Josh Hubbard was fantastic in this game too for Mississippi State. But in the final minute and a half of this game, Reed Sheppard has 11 points, 1 block, and then he closes it with like a steal to finish it out. It was unbelievable. He was fantastic in this game. I loved every single thing. It was the toughness. It was the mental fortitude to go and drill those free throws while he's smiling on the foul line. The confidence to just go and drill that floater at the end. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable, I thought.
The experience you had was exactly the same experience I had. I was having a conversation with somebody in a completely kind of different context, but NBA draft context about this game for Reed Sheppard as an NBA draft prospect. And it was like, it just kept getting better and it kept getting better and it kept getting better. And eventually it was like, yep, this is the one. Like this is the game. I also want to talk, you briefly mentioned the turnover, Sam. He actually had he had 2 turnovers in this game. So the first one is a ball screen and roll with a Vesic, and he misses him, completely misses him on the roll, wide open, and he tries to throw a pass and he turns it over. I loved his response. Comes down, next 2 possessions, ball screen and roll with the Vesic. First one comes off, hits a Vesic, dunk. Second one, because he had just hit a Vesic, the big man stays home a little bit quicker, Sam. Sheppard comes off, creates space, hits like a 23-foot 3-point pull-up. So it was the response to the turnover. And then he had a big one late. Like that was a huge turnover late in the game. I think Kentucky was up 3 when he turned it over, throwing it down the floor. He comes back, he hits 2 clutch free throws, and then he calls game with the little floater. Like as everything that stood out in this game, the contesting jump shots, the defense, the ridiculous 3-point shot making, it was his resolve and his response to those 2 mistakes that stood out the most to me.
It feels like when I watch Reed that like, and I've kind of like gotten this like understanding from talking to people around it. Like, I'm not sure he totally gets how good he is yet. It's kind of where I'm at. Like, there are games where like he's a little bit happy to like kind of go into the, tapestry of the game a little bit more often. Obviously, the role at Kentucky where he's coming off the bench behind DJ Wagner and playing next to Rob Dillingham, who's as good with the ball as he is. There is a chance at times where I think Reed does kind of blend in a little bit more, but he blends in. Even when he's blending in, he's still making an impact on the game. He's still helping with quick reads, unbelievable processing ability, defensive playmaking. Look, there are moments where Reed Sheppard like gets lost off the ball defensively.
Sure. Yes.
Like he has like those space cadet-y moments, but I think he's pretty good on the ball for somebody who's, a 6'2" like white kid without like a ton of length. Right. I think he does like a pretty good job using his feet to keep his chest in front of people. There are matchups where he just kind of gets pushed through a little bit because he's still very young, and that's okay. Reed is an incredible defensive playmaker. He has these unbelievable, like instinctual moments where like some of his scramble rotations and like digs onto the ball on drives and like scramble closeouts and things like that. It's just unbelievable. Honestly, this is kind of the name I've been thinking about. Shout out Resball TV. Does Reed Sheppard give you Kyle Lowry vibes? It's kind of the name I've been thinking about with him more and more, the more that I watch him. I'm really glad that he just brought that up.
Yeah, no, and I'll say even because I think he had 3 off ball where he got ball watchy. The crazy thing was though, he was able to recover and make a play on 2 of the 3. One of them was where he blocked the corner 3-pointer that you were talking about. He got ball watchy in that situation, but was able to cover a crazy amount of ground. Another one, he ended up getting a block from behind. So, this Kyle Lowry comp is interesting because it's been a little bit hard to pinpoint. And I think it's because you brought this up, which I think really is the biggest thing that we still have to figure out with Reed Sheppard. Everybody's going to buy the shooting, the defensive stuff that we've talked about, I think is pretty well locked in. I think what really determined Reed Sheppard's ceiling is how much can he be an on-ball guy? How much can he create? How much can he penetrate the defense? All of that stuff. In this game, he showed a lot of that, Sam. I pulled like 6-7 clips where Reed Sheppard very early is able to turn the defender's hips and shoulders to the sideline and has a downhill driving opportunity. Some of them he scores, some of them he sprays to shooters, but that's really, really, enticing and intriguing if Shepard is able to do that type of stuff on the ball as well.
Yeah, I've loved everything about the Reed Shepard experience this year. This is, what, the umpteenth time that we've had this discussion on the podcast this year. The other thing about Reed that is worth bringing up, I'm not sure people understand how bonkers his impact is in terms of Kentucky's like on-off numbers is. So right now, when Reed Shepard is on the court, Kentucky beats its opponents by 25.6 points per 100 possessions, according to Pivot Analysis. Pivot's a, group of folks, a consultancy group that does a great job of cleaning the on-off data and, making sure that everything is right. So I tend to use their numbers. Do you know what Kentucky is losing by when Reed Shepard is off the court?
What did you say they were winning by?
They're winning by 26 points per 100 possessions.
Holy cow. So when he's off, let's say -2.
They're losing non-Reed Shepard minutes by 11.
Shut up. That's not true. 36.4
points per 100 possessions. They are winning Reed's minutes by 25.6. They are losing them by 11.4 when he's off the court.
I thought I was being crazy saying it was negative. So the fact it's that much is wow.
Well, so here's the crazier number. There's only one. So Kentucky wins its minutes with everybody else, like anybody else that's on the court, right? In their minutes, Kentucky wins anybody else's minutes, right? Not only did they win their minutes, but like when Antonio Reeves is on the court, he's the guy that has the second biggest impact, right, on the team in terms of the on-off numbers. When Antonio Reeves is off the court, they still win their minutes by 8.6 points per 100 possessions. There is a 20-point difference between anybody else in Kentucky's rotation and Reed Shepard in terms of his on-court versus off-court impact when he's playing versus when he's not playing. Like, play him like as much as you can, and they're doing that. Like, I want to be clear, he's playing like 32, 34 minutes a night. Like, it's fine now. It's whatever. But it's just crazy what the numbers say. The numbers are insane. So, like, the other thing is, the thing that I think from a lineup perspective that Kentucky is not doing enough of are the Reed, Robb, and Reeves minutes. The Reed, Robb, and Reeves minutes are Kentucky's best, like, minutes right now. Coming into the Mississippi State game, Kentucky was outscoring its opponents 135.8 to 102.4 per 100 possessions with Reed, Robb, and Reeves on the court. Even just in SEC games, Kentucky is winning its Reed, Robb, and Reeves minutes 131.6 to 111.3. Coming into that game, they'd only played 162 minutes in, probably 15 games together. So like 11 to 12 minutes. It's baffling to me that they don't play those three together like in the way that they do. The Reed Shepard experience, though, is just like baffling in general. He is staggeringly good at basketball. And look, I've been clear throughout the year. I have a top 5 grade on him. I do. I continue to. Look, I don't know if he'll get to number 1 for me, but like it's not out of the cards, to be honest with you. Like I think that if I'm counting the guys that I trust the most, Reed is up there.
Well, and the thing that I love is, I mean, those numbers are staggering, right? And they're really cool, but the eye test matches it. Like, you watch Reed Shepard play and you can see how he's impacting this team being better. We've highlighted just the transition passing, right? Just to name one simple example that never
Unbelievable
showed
hit ahead passer.
does not show up in the box score. I bet he doesn't have a single assist for the ones we're specifically referencing right now, but it gets him out in transition. That may lead to the next one. It may change sides of the floor, which puts the defense off balance, but it's just like the eye test matches the numbers. And it's really exciting when that happens as an evaluator, because then you can really feel confident about where you have a prospect when what your eyes are telling you, and then the numbers back all of that up. And again, like the shooting percentages, the 3-point percentages, like all of this stuff, the on off, everything just kind of matches in terms of who this kid is as a player, his value to this Kentucky team. And I think what we both believe he can be as an NBA prospect, NBA player.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of dead on, to be honest with you. I'm a big fan. The other guy that had a monster game this week was Dalton Connect, right? Dalton Connect, I thought, was absolutely just unbelievable in their game on Monday against Auburn. Goes for 39 points on 12 of 21 from the field, drills 5 threes, gets to the line 12 times, 3 steals, just a fantastic game.
Yeah, I mean, this was unbelievable. Like the way Tennessee just like it looked like an NBA game, truly, at the end of this one, where they ran this action on the weak side where Dalton could essentially go baseline or to the wing. He would go baseline, they'd get the switch they wanted, and he would just attack over and over. The first time he hits a pull-up 3, he gets it again. And you know that this time he's going to hezzy because you have to get a hand up and lunge at the shot. So he hezzies, left hand in and out, gets to the rim, and he dunks. And it was just like, it just not very often you see them just give a player the ball in college basketball and say, go get a bucket. And that's what he can do. When people were telling me coming into the year that he was a true 3-level scorer, that there were no questions about his ability to get buckets at this level, I thought there was going to be a learning curve here. I realized what people, he's 20, how many ever years old. This is his 5th year in college. It was 2 years at JUCO. It was 2 years in the Big Sky, with all due respect to the Big Sky and Northern Colorado. I didn't think the transition was going to be this seamless offensively. And it gives me a little bit more hope that like he's going to be able to take that into the next level as well. I know there's all the defensive questions. I get it. But offensively, I'm not sure there's a whole lot of guys you trust to score the ball more than you trust Dalton Connect right now.
It's 100% right. Like Dalton Connect this year, if you look in SEC play right now, he's averaging 25 points per game in SEC play. SEC is a good league. That's an athletic league. That's a tough league. He's dropping 25 a night. That's a bonkers number. If you take out like those games that he missed in the middle of the season where, he gets hurt in the North Carolina game, he like kind of plays through it against George Mason in Illinois and like keeps playing through it against Georgia Southern, NC State, Tarleton State, Norfolk State, and Ole Miss. So that's a group of, I believe it's 7 games where he averaged 9.9 points and clearly was still getting over that ankle injury.
Yeah,
in
that really
Hill.
bothered him. Yeah, for sure.
He's averaging like 26 or 27 a night. Like it's like completely like off the charts ridiculous. So yeah, I think Dalton's like a ready-made floor spacer in the NBA, can really shoot it. Real athlete, obviously, as well. Like not just like some, fake, guy that can't move. Defensively, it's going to be a project. Like undeniably, it's going to be a project. But I think that he's shown growth throughout the course of the year, at least, to where it gives me hope that, what was going on at Northern Colorado, and we're actually weirdly about to talk about Northern Colorado in their defense here in a second. It gives me hope that this being his only real like year having to defend, maybe there's some upside with him still having not necessarily reached his ceiling there, even though he's 23.
So Nick Nevin says they also tried blitzing. He hit a great corner pass. So that was a great point that I had forgot, that they did go to blitzing and trapping him, and he was very willing to give it up. But yeah, you kind of touched on where I'm at with his defense in terms of, yes, he's a 5th-year college guy. My understanding, he was small. He was a late bloomer in high school and played all zone. Then he went junior college. This is no knock on JUCO. I played JUCO. Like I'm a JUCO product, but it's not not every program is like super strategic and really teaching you the ins and outs and fundamentals of defense. And then he went to Northern Colorado, which you're about to talk about, where I don't know that his defense was really refined and grown and all of those things. I tend to give him the benefit of the doubt for his age and his amount of experience, because I feel like it's the first stop. He's had 6 months, essentially, maybe 9 months now, where he's truly been challenged and asked to play defense. Here's the other thing, Sam. We give guys passes all the time in college because the amount of offensive usage they're having to take, and we think that, hey, their defense will be better. Like, this isn't going to be the offensive usage he has in the NBA. So he will have more energy. He will be able to give some fouls. Like, he can't get in foul trouble for Tennessee. So think about all of those things that are playing into this as well. I tend to just give him a little bit and have a little bit of hope for what he can grow into defensively, especially with some of his physical. My biggest worry, Sam, I feel like he doesn't bend very well. Like, I feel like he has some tight hips defensively on the ball. That may be my biggest worry more than anything is, can he really get in a stance and bend and move with these guys?
Yeah, look, I think he's probably going to go somewhere in the top 20 at least. Lottery is very much in the cards to me. He very well could go somewhere in that 8 to 14 range, and that wouldn't blow my mind at all. He's a real shooter who is putting up unbelievable numbers. His offensive game just translates. It does. He can attack closeouts. He's gotten better as a passer throughout the year. He's shown some growth defensively, at least here. Yeah, I am a fan. The last guy I want to talk about is Dylan Jones. He is a Bryce Simon special here on this show. Dylan Jones went for 30 points, 23 rebounds, 9 assists in a game against Northern Colorado. And it's almost interesting to contrast the Reed Shepherd and Dalton Connect games with the Dylan Jones game, because I went through and watched the Dylan Jones game against Northern Colorado and St. Thomas, another guy that Bryce has brought up on the show before. Look, I was impressed with the production. I was impressed with, seriously, you go for 30, 23, and 9. Like, how can you not be impressed on some level, right? But the whole time I was watching it, just in the context of NBA draft and trying to figure out what his projection to the next level is, none of it was translatable unless you're going to put the ball in Dylan Jones's hands. And I don't think any NBA team is going to put the ball in Dylan Jones's hands, is kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't think he's shifty enough. I don't think he's athletic enough to get separation. Like, he's not going to play like the point wing-ish role that he plays for Weber. So it was like trying to figure out, what does this look like? And while it was a great game, I just kind of sat there and I was like, this is super competitive. Like, I'm really impressed that he's kind of carrying his team to a win here. But like, I don't know how this is going to work at the next level, even still with all of this production. Like, he's just grabbing like easy defensive rebounds that are like fairly uncontested. He's leading the break off of those and grabbing and going, like kind of an interesting skill, but then also is just like kind of driving and using his frame to get by. He had a couple of pull-up threes that I thought or he had one pull-up three and then like hit another one like off the catch that was fine, but I think he went like 2 for 9 from 3. I'm struggling a little bit with Dylan Jones, like even in these games where he plays really well, just in terms of what does it look like at the next level?
Yeah. So the thing is with Dylan Jones, there's no denying, like, he is a talented basketball player. Like, he can play basketball, especially at the collegiate level. He's had major production and he's done it over and over and over. I think the question with Dylan is, what does it translate to in the NBA? And that's kind of what you were alluding to. And it's funny you bring up the rebound. So a peek behind the curtain for me, there's guys I watch way more than other guys. Like, I would feel like I probably know Dylan Jones' game about as good as anybody in the space. Deron Holmes is another guy that way. And so you brought up the rebounding. I watched Dylan Jones grab defensive rebounds, and you're right. Like, none of his other teammates go for those, right? Like, they kind of know Dylan's going to get the rebound. He's going to grab and go. I watch a lot of Deron Holmes film, and I get frustrated because he has like all of these other teammates like snatching rebounds from him. And I'm like, man, like, now Deron's kind of getting cooked a little bit for not averaging 10 rebounds a game as a big in the A10. And I'm like, he's doing all the things you want him to do. It's just his teammates are grabbing them. So there is some context to the stats and the schemes and those type of things. But with Dylan, it was really about coming back this year and proving the shooting ability. And he's at 33% on 3.5 attempts. Like, so not quite there. The free throw touch is really good. Resball TV, he loves to call me out about Dylan Jones. Like, he loves doing this, and it's the blocks. I want to make the same point with Dylan Jones that I made with Dalton Connect, though, Sam. Like, I have a pretty good feeling that Dylan Jones is not allowed to go for steals and not allowed to go for blocks. Like, you talk about a guy that they cannot afford to get in foul trouble. Weber State cannot afford for Dylan Jones to get in foul trouble. I think Dylan Jones is a much better defender than what people give him credit for in terms of college. It's the offensive thing, though, Sam. Like, what is the role? What is the archetype? You and I have had this conversation going back 12 months about, like, is he the Draymond Green role? Can he shoot it and be a Grant Williams role? Are people going to put him in the short? Because he is a really good playmaker. That's the big question, because the talent and the skill and the production is kind of unquestioned.
Yeah. It was interesting. It was an interesting game. Question from Thomas Carnero. We're going to take a few draft questions before we go to best contracts. Would your evaluation
in my head, Sam? I literally was going to ask you this today. I swear, like, honest truth.
Question: would your evaluation on players for the draft change if the NBA changes defensive 3 seconds rule again, as an example? Yes. I mean, like,
floor spacers, right?
Well, floor spacers, but like Donovan Clingan was the first name I thought of.
Oh, yeah.
My
okay.
God, like,
if you
could camp Clingan in the paint for more than 3 seconds, I mean, Jesus Christ, like, that would be really fun. It would also make, for instance, floor spacing bigs even more valuable, right? Because if you had a floor spacing big, you would not be able to camp Clingan out quite as much. Bigs who can shoot, I think, would become even more valuable, probably, on some level.
Is Ryan Dunn even a first-round prospect in that NBA?
In a defensive 3 seconds? Well, honestly, I mean, it changes so much, right?
Because I don't think his defensive value increases, because his value is that he can cover so much. It's not the Donovan Clingan type. You know what I mean? Like, his is that he can cover ground and the floor. Like, so you need that when you can't have somebody camped in the lane. And then he's even more of a liability on the offensive end.
Yeah. I mean, it's 100% right. I honestly wonder, like, my immediate reaction to the whole, like, defensive 3 seconds, like, changing thing was, does this change the value of these guys like Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., skinnier bigs who are okay rebounders, everything like that, who just cover ground like that, right? Like, who just cover ground across the board all the time. And that's like their defensive skill. I mean, those are the guys that are most valuable in the NBA right now. But then you look at when they get put into FIBA competition, right? It's not as valuable. I mean, we don't know that with Mobley yet, but like with Jaren, like, we saw that it just wasn't as useful, right? So, I mean, it makes drop coverage like probably way more valuable. Seriously, if you can get like a pick and pop big, I mean, it's so interesting though, because like in the playoffs, right? To win at the highest levels of basketball, you're still going to have to be able to space the floor at least 4 or 5 spots. Even with this, maybe like 5 or 5 spots. And if you're doing that anyway, it still diminishes the value of these just like pure drop coverage bigs. The game is so skilled now. Look, I'm like generally in favor of this, like, as a adjustment. I think it's a pretty interesting way to change things. But yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm definitely intrigued by it.
I wonder, I don't have specific names, but I wonder if another offensive skill set is like the super fast, twitchy, smaller guards who can just beat everybody to the rim and finish with finesse. are a little less valued, and you value a
Yeah.
guy who can get to the mid range and be super efficient from the mid range, right? Because theoretically,
Yeah.
you have more help defense, the lane's more clogged. Maybe your big, powerful finishers can and above the rim guys can still get there and do that. But I'm talking about like your super small guys who are finishing with finesse before the help can get there. Well, now the help's standing there. Now a mid-range 15-foot pull-up, assassin, that guy becomes more valuable just in terms of scoring.
Floater game becomes
Yeah,
even more
floater. Yes.
valuable as
Yes.
well. Yeah,
Yep.
like anything from that 8 to 22-foot range or whatever becomes really, really valuable. Yeah, I think that's an interesting take. It would be a substantial like change to the ecosystem of the NBA throughout the regular season. I'm still trying to figure out in the playoffs how big of a deal it would be, because teams, like Denver, for instance, right? This doesn't really impact the way you guard Denver all that much. I mean, I guess it does a little bit because Jokic is gonna, it probably makes it a little bit harder for Jokic's like bully ball game, like on the block to work, but you kind of have to guard Jokic with the center anyway. Like this doesn't really, like honestly, the team that this would help most, in my opinion, actually might be Denver. It actually might be Boston. It makes the teams at the top of the league right now, I think, even better. I mean, God, Boston could camp Porzingis out in the paint and then have his spacing up
Stretch
from
it.
the 3-point line.
Yep.
I mean, I think Boston actually like might win the title in that case.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's the perfect example, right, of what you could do. It just, I don't know. It's interesting with I'm interested to see if the NBA does something. Like I'm sure these conversations are always happening. I don't know how seriously they're happening amongst real NBA people and not just like Twitterverse and here on podcasts and stuff like that. But I wonder if some sort of change is coming to the defensive rules to, slow down the offensive firepower.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Someone asked about Jimmer Fredette um and Reed Shepard. Where is that question? Let's see here.
I mean,
Reed Shepard's statistical profile is so unique, the same way Jimmer Fredette's was when he was in college, and Reed has a lot of the same question marks. What do you make of that? So Jimmer is a name that has come up when I've talked to NBA evaluators. I don't really think they're all that similar, if I'm being completely honest.
yeah.
I get it offensively to an extent because like they kind of look similar in terms of their shooting a little bit. But to me, Reed is way ahead as a defender. He is so far ahead as a passer and just like seeing the floor and processing the game and everything like that. Like the shooting, like I think he's just like a better catch and shoot guy than Jimmer ever was. Jimmer is probably a more natural scorer than Reed ever was, if I'm
Agreed.
being honest.
Yep.
But yeah, I think Reed is just way ahead kind of across the board on everything with Jimmer. I don't really think that I understand like if you just look at the box score like stuff that Jimmer's junior and senior seasons probably look pretty similar to Reed's, but he was a little bit older than Reed was. And like the steal rate is not all that close. He never blocked shots. Don't again, not as good of a catch and shoot guy, so it didn't translate and scale as well off the ball. Yeah, I think that they're just pretty different.
Yeah, I don't like this at all. Like my initial reaction was like, doesn't Reed do all of the tertiary things way better than Jimmer ever did? Like I remember Jimmer made crazy shots, a lot of it with the ball in hand, off the bounce, incredible score. Also doing it, later in his career. But I don't remember the talk of Jimmer being this defensive guy, the intangible things, making the little plays. Like nobody was breaking down his outlet passes and stuff like we talk about all the time. I don't think I agree with that.
Shout out to Azana Kibrit for the super chat. I've heard that descending contracts like Kyle Kuzma and Denny Avdia are attractive to contenders. What's their worth? I think we're probably going to talk about both those guys in the next segment here.
I have them
Denny
on my
and
list.
Kuzma.
Yep.
Yeah. They're not on my top 10, either of them.
No, they're not in my top 10, but they're in the conversation.
My longer list, yeah, I have them. And should the Wizards draft Alex Sarr or Topic? I would draft Sarr over Topic. If I was the Wizards, I would want the upside of like 7-1 long, and they really just need defensive infrastructure in some way, shape, or form. I would go Sarr personally if I was the Wizards over Topic. I don't know if Sarr would be my number one guy for the Wizards, but I would go Sarr over Topic for sure. I understand the willingness to get somebody like Topic. Big guard, you can theoretically see how that works. They need a point guard long term. Tyus Jones, I think is a really, really good NBA player, but A, he's a free agent, and B, even if you sign him, to a 2 or 3 year deal in the offseason, you're still looking for your long term guy. The guy I have been wondering about a little bit for the Wizards is, Will Dawkins was in Oklahoma City's front office. Like, I wonder if like Josh Giddey could potentially line up with Washington. That's just like is a connecting the dots name more than anything, because Oklahoma City is probably going to have to make a move before they pay Josh like a real deal, I would think.
Yeah, I have Sarr easily over Topic for the Wizards, and I think Sarr, if the Wizards had the number one pick, I would probably mock Alex Sarr to the Washington Wizards, as we sit here on March 1st. Not that I don't like Risa Shea and like we talked about all these guys. I kind of like the wing room with Bilal, and I think Corey Kispert's a fine player, and we're going to talk about Denny, and I think I would go Alex Sarr as the number one guy on my board for the Wizards right now. So that would be easily Sarr over Topic for me.
I think that's probably right. Let's see here. How does Zachary Rizachet from Basketball Genesis compare to Jabari Smith as a prospect? I think that Rizachet is more of a wing.
Agreed.
In terms of the way that he operates. Auburn used Jabari a lot more in that like mid to high post area. They used him more as like a traditional 4-man. Whereas to me, it feels like Borg uses him more as like a wing kind of player with Rizachet. So that would be like the just role difference that immediately sticks out to me without having thought a crazy amount about this previously. Defensively, kind of similar actually, in terms of what I liked most about both of them was that they were good off the ball. You could put them in the weak side corner and they could really cover ground in a substantial way. I thought that they both were quite good at being able to kind of close out on shooters and be able to protect the rim, because they're both 6'9", 6'10"ish. I think Jabari's probably a little bit taller, and honestly, I think Jabari's even a little bit longer too. I would have Jabari ahead of Rizachet as a prospect overall. I think Jabari's athleticism is just a little bit higher, but he's also got that like inherent stiffness that is interesting. Rizachet isn't quite as stiff, but I think he has less explosiveness. I'm just kind of like honestly stream of conscious, like thinking about this in my head as we're going through it. Yeah, like what are your thoughts on this?
No, I kind of was in the same spot as you. The first thing I was going to say is I don't see Rizachet as a forward right now. I have him very much as a wing. So that was going to be the first thing I said. Defensively, you made the same points I was going to make. Offensively, I think that's like a similar role, like a catch and shoot guy. I would like to think that I probably believe in Rizachet's off the bounce a little bit more. Although I was trying to buy Jabari's off the bounce just because when you shoot the ball that well, I kind of buy into you being able to attack closeouts. It's an interesting, I know he wasn't comping them 1-to-1, but just like it's interesting comparing them. I don't hate the wing version of Jabari Smith Jr. for Zach Rizachet. I do think he's a little bit more fluid than Jabari was.
Yeah. Someone said Draft Sickos made a good point that Reed is comparable to Grayson Allen in college. That's not top 5. Yeah, just way more expansive. a game than what Grayson had. Like, I guess that you could say, like, on the age continuum, Grayson had that big sophomore year where he averaged like 22 or something like that. But again, like, seriously, defensively, in terms of playmaking, in terms of processing, in terms of feel, it's just kind of not that close. Like, it's I think a lot of Grayson Allen, and I think he's turned into a really good guy for Phoenix to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, also just like has never been the shooter that Reed is. Like, Reed is very clearly, or at least like at Duke, he was never the shooter that Reed was. So yeah, no, I don't see that at all either.
Sam, the kid is shooting over 50% from three in the SEC in almost 30 games. Like, I've said this. I will be the first one that said it. I said, well, yeah, of course he's in the lottery right now. He's shooting over 50% from three. How are we going to evaluate him? What are we all going to think when he no longer shoots 50% from three? It's March 1st. He's still shooting 50% from three. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard to argue against that alone. And then, like, yeah, Grayson Allen is how many years into the NBA though? Like, come on now. Like, so it's
Well,
just
the other thing with Reed that I think is really interesting, actually, he's made like subtle improvements in his shot since high school. Like, he used to have like a bit of like a backward motion toward his face on the jumper, and now it's like comes up smoother and like in one motion in a way. Like, guys get better as shooters. Like, Dirty Dancer brings up Grayson Allen shooting nearly 50% from three in the NBA right now. Yeah, that's what happened. Guys get better as shooters.
well, that's why I said what I
Reed's going to
said
get
is like,
better as a shooter. Yeah, like,
I mean, it's his 6th year in the NBA, and this is by far his best shooting season. And like, listen, Grayson Allen is on my like secondary list of guys we're going to talk about today because he's been so darn good. He's not going to make the list because of the context we talked about with contract length, but I think it's a little unfair to like compare Grayson Allen in year 6 in the NBA that is 6% better than any other year he's had. But I just he's shooting unbelievable. Like, I just 50% in the SEC for Kentucky with his role kind of changing throughout the year. We talk about that as well, right? Like, coming off the bench, playing a bigger role, like all of that stuff. Like, it's just crazy impressive. I know, I realize people have like vibes of like, this isn't going to work because we've been tricked by it before. I don't know how you feel, Sam. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm willing to be wrong, right? Like, you just have guys, you're like, yeah,
totally.
there's some potential quote unquote red flags. I'm willing to be wrong about Reed Sheppard being a lottery pick and a really quality NBA player because he does a lot of really good things. It's not just one thing either.
Yeah, Basketball Genesis brought up Tyus Jones as a Reed Sheppard cop, was nowhere near the shooter in college. It just like wasn't even in the ballpark. Okay. Let's do best contracts. Let's do it. All right, Bryce. I sent you a list of like 25 names or so.
Yep.
Yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I've ordered them in a slightly different way than what I had them when we talked.
Okay.
The way we're going to do this is we're going to count down 10 to 1. We're going to start with some of the names we just slightly kind of left off. And I also want to give some context on how we came to these lists of the best contracts.
Okay.
So the way that I thought about it, and I kind of shared my ideas with you, are A, no rookie scale contracts, because those are set in stone. There's no like negotiation there. No max contracts, because max contracts are by far the most valuable in the NBA. Whatever Nikola Jokic is getting paid, it's not enough. Truly. Like a team should pay him $100 million a year at this point to play for their team. And they will be fucking fantastic because that's how good Nikola Jokic is. So there's that piece of it. We're removing max contracts. The way I thought about removing max contracts was anybody who is currently signed to a max extension or anybody that is currently on a contract that was a maximum number when they signed the contract. So like Jamal Murray right now is underpaid, right? Jamal Murray right now, is not what the max level is even at this point because the cap has jumped since he's been in the league. But he signed his max level deal. So there's no negotiation there. There's no anything. We removed all of those guys. Things that matter here. Contract cost obviously is important.
Yep.
Production is incredibly important. You have to be good at basketball. Contract length is really important. If you have somebody locked in for 3 years on a bargain deal versus 1 year on a bargain deal, that is way more valuable than just having that guy for one. Any other thoughts that you had on this?
No, I will say the only thing I struggled with was role for some of these guys and team context. So
Yep.
it was like some guys I think I'm ended up giving a bump because it's like, man, this guy is really valuable to this team because they're really expensive and they're getting starting minutes and this type of production for this amount of money. Where if it was on a different team, maybe it wouldn't seem like that big of a bargain. And then descending money contracts, I feel like I love. And so I definitely kind of ventured towards those. But I feel like I really struggled with some guys like, man, do I really think he's that big of a bargain? And then I found myself going, well, if that team didn't have him on that money, they would be in trouble. So I feel like as I went through, there was some of those guys that got a bump.
So guys that were left off of my list, yell out at any point if they are on your list, like of top 10.
Okay.
Let's start with Denny Avdia and Kyle Kuzma, neither of whom made my list. Denny Avdia has been absolutely fantastic.
Awesome.
I would say since like December-ish, it feels like now. He's always been like a really active defender and always been a really useful, like multi-positional connective tissue guy. Over the course of since December 29th, it looks like is the date, Denny is averaging 16.5 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, shooting 53, 48, 70 from the field. I do not think Denny is a 40% three-point shooter, to be completely honest. I don't. But I do think that even if he is an improved like 35% three-point shooter, and for his career still, because he made somewhere between 29 and 31% of his threes for his first 3 years, he's still well below average. But on a deal that is $15.6 million next year, 14.4 in 2025-26, 13 million in 26-27, and 11.9 million in 2027-28. That is one of the like 6 or so deals that I left off. I tended to give a little bit more of a bump to guys that I think have either proven it at like a star adjacent level or have proven it in the playoffs in some way, shape, or form. Or still have like real like star caliber-ish upside. That was kind of where I went with this. Do you have any thoughts on Denny?
No, I mean, he was absolutely one that I'm glad you had. He was right there on my list. For just some context I divided mine into 2 groups of 5 a little bit, and I'll still run it down 10-1. I kind of went like the bigger money contracts kind of stars. And then I have guys making less than 15 million and those group of guys as well, just to split it up just a little bit. But Denny was absolutely in the conversation. And if there's an argument for him, Sam, he meets 2 really good criteria. It's a very long contract and it's a descending contract for a player who seems to be getting better and kind of finding his rhythm and flow and role within the NBA. That could look like like we do this 2 years from now and that thing still fits those contexts. And
Totally.
he may lead the list, like, I mean, he could easily be a top 5, top 10 guy a couple years from now. And if you wanted to make an argument for it this time around, I wouldn't have like crazy pushback. It's been somewhat small of a sample of him being this good, though.
Kyle Kuzma, speaking of descending contracts on the Wizards, averaging 22, 7, and 4 this year, has shown that when he gets in the playoffs and plays for a good team, he's willing to defend. Kuzma is in the first year of something like I think it's like a 4-year, $90 million deal. I think it might be like 88 or something in those, in that vicinity. Descends all the way down to 19.4 million in 2026-27. Good player, really, good player that I think is a starting caliber player in the league. Just, I would like to see it a little bit more.
Yeah, no, again, it's one of those that if it's not descending, I don't think we even talk about him. But the fact that it is descending, 2 years from now, when he's on the books for 21.5, if he's still playing at a good level, and then the next year when he's on for 19, like that's going to be a really great value. It'll be really interesting to see whether maybe it's with the Wizards, maybe he sticks and he grows this thing out like he said he wanted to. But that's going to be a really valuable trade chip for that team, I think. Moving forward.
Two younger guys that like were to qualify for this. I didn't put them on because I wasn't totally sure if they should qualify. Vince Williams and Isaiah Joe, they signed these deals like basically right off of a rookie deal kind of thing. Vince Williams has been really good on defense this year, averaging 10.6 rebounds, 3 assists, aggressive, energetic defender. I would like to see what it looks like over the course of a full season before him, being on this list. And then Isaiah Joe is one of the best 3-point shooters in all of the NBA, shooting 43% from 3 on 4.5 3-point attempts per game. His last 2 years in Oklahoma City have been absolutely unbelievably impressive as a shooter. Yeah, I mean, Joe has this year at 2 million, next year at 2.1 million. The fact that he only has 1 year left kind of reduced him for me. So, yeah, like both guys I thought worth bringing up at least.
Yeah, Isaiah Joe was probably right there. I went back and forth with him quite a bit. Like you said, 2 million is crazy, right? Like that absolutely puts him in the conversation for the production. I'm really excited to see what that looks like in the playoffs for the Thunder and how much they may have to lean into him because of some of the stuff we've talked about on previous episodes with that team and what it looks like when they get into the postseason. But yeah, I mean, just only 1 more year at that number, and then he's going to get paid a little bit.
Yep, that is correct. Let's see here. Other names I had. I want to get to a few others before I get into like the 6 guys that I left off. Naz Reid and Ivica Zubac, Ivica is like a starting caliber center in the NBA who is not making crazy money by any stretch of the imagination. Zubac's deal right now, as we talk, is this year 10.9, next year 11.7. Another guy with only 1 year left on the deal after this one, so I kind of moved him down a little bit. And then Naz Reid, has been fantastic this year for the Timberwolves. Has a very real 6th man of the year case. He's making 13.9 next year, 15 million the year after that, but the year after that is a player option. So inherently, I think it's very difficult to put those player options into any sort of value equation here.
Yeah.
I kind of treated for the most part player options like they would be declined.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, player options for guys that we're saying are on the best contracts in the league
are not
inherently they're not enough money to pay those guys. So yeah, I ended up moving those 2 guys slightly off.
Yeah, I actually have Zubac in my top 10. And he was the one I was alluding to earlier in terms of this could be an overvalue of just he's really valuable to the Clippers. I think he's a good player. He's a play finisher. Maybe it's just like right team, right player, all of that stuff. But I think that's a huge contract for them in terms of them being able to be successful, to have this type of center on that contract. Again, maybe I played into it a little bit much. It wasn't going to be hot. Like he's going to be very early in my top 10 if we're going descending. But yeah.
Okay. The guys that were immediately off of my list outside of Denny.
Okay.
Let's start with two guys that signed deals this summer that I think were just really, really high level. Herb Jones and Dante DiVincenzo.
Okay.
Those were the guys. I think I had Denny. I'm looking now at 17. I had Herb Jones and Dante at 15 and 16. Dante this year, I mean, is shooting the absolute lights out of the building. He is playing really, really solid defense. He basically made Quentin Grimes expendable for the New York Knicks. His deal is 10.9 million this year, 11.4 million next year, 12 million in 2025-26, 12.5 in 2026-27. If he continues this, he's definitely on this list, like no questions asked. This is by far his best season of his career. I thought he was good last year for Golden State, but like he was good as like a part-time starter. If he's able to keep this up, what he's doing, he will be on the list next season. I think that I couldn't quite get there with it only being 1 year of this level of production for Dante.
So he's number 10 on my list, to be completely transparent, and to now that since we brought him up. And I think it was exactly what you said, though. Like, I was just giving him the benefit of the doubt of what this season is. He's 27 years old. So ideally he's hitting his prime, finding his role. He did shoot 40% from three on over 5 attempts last season as well. Career 37% 3-point shooter. What I like about Dante is he's filled whatever role the Knicks needed on a given night. I've watched him take 18 threes in a game because that's what the team needed him to do. I think he competes defensively. I think the length of the contract really played into this one for me, Sam, but that's still below the non-tax MLE, so you're still talking about if this guy really starts at the 2 for the Knicks over the next 3-4 years and is able to just fit in perfectly around Brunson, OG, Randall, whatever star and that's the nice thing about him, right? Like, you bring in a star, then he's still going to fit in nicely. Like, I think you can just put him in wherever you need him to. That was a really good signing. It's crazy how many Knicks we're going to mention during the course of this episode, and maybe even leave 1 or 2 out that should have been mentioned. He was number 10 on my list.
Herb Jones is the other guy that I mentioned here. Herb Jones has continued to become one of the absolute best perimeter defenders in the NBA, point blank. This year, he is shooting 51% from the field and 43% from three. He continues to up his 3-point volume. My problem is, like, he just doesn't get guarded out there, which makes this a little bit more complicated. He's also, making 12 million this year, 13 million next year, 14 million in 2025-26, and then 15 million in 2026-27. Those are great numbers for him if he continues to shoot. If the shooting continues to grow and to build, he will be on this list for me next season for sure. I just want 1 more year of knowing exactly what the shooting is, because I want to see exactly what this looks like in the playoffs before knowing.
Yep, I agree 100%. He was just off my list, but agree with everything you said.
Yeah, it's a fantastic deal. I just wanted to know more. Miles Turner is on my list. He's, one of the best centers in the league. 17, not one of the best, but probably, a top 10-ish center in the league. 17.7 rebounds, shooting 53% from the field. Gets closed out at least on from behind the 3-point line, I think is a fair way to put it. Shooting 33% from there. Obviously a fantastic shot blocker and protector. I think he's been a little bit less valuable at the end of the day defensively than what we've seen from him previously, which is why he ended up not making this, as well as the fact that he signed for 21 million this year, 19.9 million next year. Because if you remember, he signed
got that big money during the season.
Renegotiation and extension in order to get him on the 2 cheap years. I think Miles is fantastic, just slightly off in large part due to the fact that he only has 1 year left on this deal.
Yep, he was right off the list for me as well. We're pretty in lockstep so far.
I had Kobe White just off of my list.
Okay.
Did you have Kobe on yours?
I did.
Okay.
Not in the not in the top 5, but yeah.
So the reason I did not have Kobe, and he's been really, really great this year. But if you look at his last 20 or so games, and really with Kobe, this being a steal of a deal is based on this season alone,
100%.
right?
Yep.
If you look at his last 20 games, he's averaging 21 points, 5.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 2.4 turnovers, but the efficiency is dropping off more toward what we've seen from him previously, right? 43.6% from the field, 32% from three in that time. I think it's a really good deal, and I think it's like unequivocally something the Bulls should be ecstatic to have. I want to see it in the playoffs, because while he's gotten
Sure.
better defensively, I don't quite know what that's going to look like yet. And B, I want to see what it looks like over the course of a full season still.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just look at what he's doing. And again, this is like context within team and stuff like that is the Bulls are going to get a 20 point per game guy for the next 3 or 4 years as their we don't know what the hell the Bulls are doing, but like it seems like it's good for them to have that, if nothing else. Like knowing nothing else about this roster and where they're going, as like, hey, that's at least this is positive. Again, it's kind of funny. This team has the amount of good contracts because I assume we're going to talk about another guard on that team here in a little while. And actually, Andre Drummond's number for this season is something like if we were doing
Crazy.
if we were doing 1 year contracts, right? Like none of those guys, like Malik Monk, Grayson Allen, all of those guys on 1 year deals, aren't going to make the list. But Drummond was another guy. It made me laugh that the Knicks was a team where a bunch of names came up, and then another one was the Bulls. I was like, really? The Bulls are the team that have 3 or 4 names that I want to consider. I just kind of buying this year's production at the number Kobe is on for the next, 3 years, 2 years.
Yep. I mean, look, other guys on the Knicks that deserve consideration on some level. I didn't consider anybody that is not signed beyond this year for this thing. So OG Anunoby and Isaiah Hartenstein, while they've been great, just don't think they can be on here because they're not signed beyond this year. Mitchell Robinson is somebody that I
had him
considered.
Yep.
But coming off the injury, I wasn't totally sure what that would look like. And then we're obviously going to talk about one guy near the top of this list.
Yeah.
The other guy that I put on here, I had him at the end of the day at like 13, was Julius Randle.
Okay.
And I get it that he's more of a floor raiser than somebody you want to have on ceiling production teams, I guess. Right. Julius Randle is signed for $25.7 million next year, $29.5 million the year after. He has made 2 All-NBA teams in the last 3 years prior to this one. He was an all-star this season. He's averaging 24 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. Honestly, for what he brings production-wise, the Randall deal is a bargain. I get it that there are something of diminishing returns when it comes to trying to contend at the highest level with Randall potentially in the playoffs. But this is a guy that in 2 of his last 3 years, according to advanced numbers, according to anything really that you look at, has been worth 10 or 11 wins for the Knicks. And that is a crazy number. I think this deal is a steal.
Listen, I like Julius Randle, Sam, and I'll tell you, he didn't really, I don't want to say he didn't come close to my top 10, but it's not because of him. It's because I had a really hard time hashing out some of these higher level players. There are some really, really talented players on some really good contracts. And what it came down to was, okay, can I get Jarrett Allen production for that's still $10 million less every year? And there's an extra year on it. Lauri Markkanen is over $10 million less than Julius Randle. So it wasn't just about is Julius Randle on a bad contract or a good contract or whatever. It's just some of these other guys for me were on much better. I had a much harder time hashing out these 25 to $30 million contracts, the kind of more star players. I had a harder time hashing those out than the lower numbers of, we'll just the Alex Caruso and those type of guys that make less than 10 or around 10.
Yeah. And the number 11 guy I had was Wendell Carter.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, Wendell Carter's contract is still like a completely bonkers thing here. He's making 13 million this year. It's going to drop to 11.9 million next year, and that's going to be at 10.8 million in 2025-26. That is
Yep.
a crazy contract for a guy who is a starting caliber center. And oh, by the way, since he's been back from his injury in his last 21 games, Wendell Carter is kind of back to being the old Wendell Carter that we've seen previously. He's averaging 13.5 points, 6.6 rebounds, 1.4 assists, shooting 59.6% from the field, 41% from three. He's still not all the way back, but that's like a league average starting center that you're getting for probably half the cost of a league average starting center for the next 3 years.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. He was right there on my list. Anybody who I had on my list, I truly considered. And then eventually you start knocking guys down. But he was, because there was guys, Sam, that I originally wrote down and then I deleted. Like, no, I don't really consider them. Wendell was not that. Wendell started on my list, stayed on my list. He's still there, just not in the top 10.
Okay. Anybody else that is not on your top 10 that I did not mention?
Is Conley on your top 10?
He is not. That's a good name. He just signed an extension for 2 years, 20 million after this year.
Age is the
reason
was
yeah. Age.
Yeah, same with me. I don't think I really like Aaron Nesmith. I wonder if that contract eventually becomes a good one. It's $11 million flat. Nick Richards is $5 million flat for 2 more years. We're probably gonna talk. We're talking Bogdan, right? For you,
we're not going to talk Bogdan for me. Bogdan dismissed for me too. Injury stuff for him as well is why he did not make it.
The one thing I like about Bogdan, and he is 31, so the age and the injuries, that is a club option on the final year, is my understanding. If I read it right. And so that makes that, when we talk about years and all of that, that's essentially going to be, I bet by that time, that 16 million is probably, Sam, below the non-taxpayer MLE, or at least right there. So that's going to look really good in those final 2 years. That's the last guy. Like, I bet we talk about the rest of these guys. Either they're on my list or on your list. So,
okay, let's get started. Number 10, I have Kristaps Porzingis.
Love it.
Kristaps Porzingis will make 29.3 million in 2024-25, 30.7 million in 2025-26. I think from a production standpoint this year on a Boston team that is like a genuinely like great team in the NBA, he has been legitimately all-star quality. He's averaging 20 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, nearly 2 blocks, shooting 53% from the field, which, by the way, that's actually a career high for him. Shooting 37% from 3, 86% from the line. He has been utterly elite at anything you could ask somebody to be elite at this year.
Yeah, he's incredible. I think what gets lost is like, we love Chet and we love Wemby, and now we're talking Alex Sarr. Like, Kristaps was one of the first ones that like was supposed to come in and be this like long, skilled, big. And, you talked about it earlier, like, he can protect the rim. He can stretch the floor. He's really unlocked some stuff with that Celtics offense. I really like it. So again, I broke mine into 2 groups of 5 because I had a really hard time hashing out these lower contracts compared to the more star level contracts and the order of those. So I went 5 and 5. So he didn't make my top 5 with the bigger number contract, but he 11 and he may have been my top 10 if I would have just done solely it that way. So 100%. Yeah. As Tomas says, the OG unicorn.
Yeah, that's right. And I think what he's brought to the table for Boston is just that floor spacing. He really is that ability. He has that ability to open up the court for guys like Jason Tatum to take advantage of his post game a little bit more often. For somebody like Derek White, who we'll talk about here on this list very obviously,
Yes, we
to
will.
be able to drive to the rim and create open shots at the basket. Just the impact that he has across the court, I think, is really, really important to everything that Boston does. And oh, by the way, like, he's a great drop coverage defender. Like, he's a really, really useful defender in that way.
Yeah, and I love I've talked about this before. I love the creative ways they do their matchups. Like they'll put Drew Holiday on a big and then let Kristaps roam, but then you can also play him in drop. Real quick context for everybody who's just tuning in here live or maybe missed it when Sam said it. This is no rookies, no max deals, and we're adding in the context of years left on the contract. And each of us, I think, probably have our own little context as well as far as
For sure.
team fit, and some of those type of things.
Okay. Number 9. Let's talk about Alex Caruso for the Chicago Bulls. Caruso only has 1 year left on this deal, $9.9 million. This is an insane bargain to have Alex Caruso for $9.9 million. Alex Caruso is a starting caliber player on a title team. He is somebody that you can put into a lineup. He will do anything you ask of him. He processes the game at an unbelievable level. He is, in my opinion, the best guard defender in the NBA. He makes the biggest impact defending multiple positions along the perimeter, be it point of attack guys at the lead guard spot. He can manage wings because he's 6'5". Everything that Alex Caruso does on the defensive end is utterly elite. Then offensively, he has gotten really good at the things he needs to get good at. He makes quick reads. He knocks down open threes when they're available to him. He doesn't take anything off of the table offensively now in the way that, even when he was with the Lakers, there was a chance that like he was kind of taking things off the table because he was a lot more reluctant as a shooter. He is no longer that reluctant as a shooter.
Yeah, I mean, I pulled his playoff stats just to have a feel. Like his career in the playoffs, 41% from the field and 30% from three. I think we probably feel strongly, Sam, that the next time Alex Caruso gets in a playoff series, he's going to shoot the ball and be better than that offensively. He's an absolute pest defensively, takes the toughest matchups. I think I saw a stat the other day. He's 4th in the NBA in deflections, which is obviously something that tracks. I think he would have been like he was top 3 in my smaller valued contracts, and probably would put him like top 7 on my list overall. So I would have had Caruso a little bit higher. I assume he's 9th because of the length, right? Like that's the only thing that's keeping him at this point.
Yeah, the contract length. I mean, he does not have a long deal, which makes it really, really difficult, I think, to put him, much higher than this at the end of the day. Yeah. If the contract was longer, like if this was last season, he would be way higher, I think.
It would be interesting because when he becomes a free agent, he's going to be 30, 31 years old. And not that that's like a dinosaur in the NBA, but I'm really interesting to see because he deserves to get paid, right? Like he needs to get paid. He'll want to get paid. It'll be interesting to see what that new contract will be.
Yeah, I agree. Number 8, Aaron Gordon from the Denver Nuggets. Aaron Gordon is making $21.3 million this year, $22.8 million next year, has a $22.8 million player option in 2025-26. He's averaging 13.9 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3.2 assists. He's the perfect complement to put next to Nikola Jokic. He is absolutely perfect for everything that Denver does, and he is making not nearly enough for what his value is to that team with his ability to take tough big wing perimeter matchups. He can scale down to the 5 occasionally, even if you need him to. He can guard up the lineup against quicker wings. Like the versatility that Aaron Gordon has is pretty real.
Yeah, I mean, this plays right into what we talked about earlier in terms of kind of factoring in team fit. On some teams, this may not be a crazy bargain, right? In terms of what do you think Aaron Gordon's value is, if he's the number 2 option on a team or something like that. But considering what he is for this Nuggets team, how perfectly he fits with this team, just how seamless it is. I know people always throw it back at me when I talk about the lack of depth for the Nuggets. And they're like, well, just wait till the playoffs when Aaron Gordon starts playing the 5. And again, like I think versatility plays into a lot of this for me as well, where he can play off Jokic at the 4, take defensive matchups, rebound, all of those things, and then be the backup 5. That's insane value on a title contender. And so he did not make my top 10. he was right there, right off of it, but I completely get it.
Yeah. He's just a fantastic role player in what he is
Yeah.
asked to do, right? Like he's asked to uh, kind of reduce his own production. Like Aaron Gordon, we've seen what Aaron Gordon looks like in Orlando, and he's only gotten better since he's been in Orlando. Him averaging 13 points per game or whatever he averages, 13.6. That's not a reflection on Aaron Gordon. It's a reflection on the Denver Nuggets ecosystem and him sacrificing to win,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Which we should all kind of celebrate a little bit more at times. I feel like we always ask players to put their egos aside and do what's best for the team and all of these things. I don't feel like we always celebrate it enough. Maybe Aaron Gordon gets plenty of love. Maybe people would disagree, but I'm glad he's getting some flowers here on this episode.
Yeah, Aaron Gordon, I thought like had a semi-real case as an all-star last year, to be honest. Probably not quite this year.
Can we get Jamal Murray one first, though? Like, if
we got to get Jamal Murray one, I think. Yeah,
as long as we agree on that. Okay.
Okay, number 7 here. Austin Reeves.
Yeah.
12 million this year, 13 million in 2024-25, 13.9 million in 2025-26, 14.9 million player option in 2026-27 that he almost assuredly will decline. So really 2 more years at 26.9 million. Averages 15.6 points, 4 rebounds, 5.6 assists per game. I mean, Austin Reeves has been fantastic, and having him for 2 more years at this cheap deal where I still think in the playoffs, he's going to be the 3rd best player on the Lakers at the end of the day, with apologies to D'Angelo Russell. It's such a benefit having him locked into this contract for the Lakers.
Austin Reeves in the playoffs, 17 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists on 46, 44, 90. Restricted free agency sucks. Austin Reeves would have made a lot more money if it wasn't for that. And as Dirty Dancer says, I would love to see Austin Reeves playing with Victor Wembanyama right now. Like, I would absolutely love it. I was sold that they were at least going to offer him a contract and at least see if the Lakers would balk. All reports were that they weren't going to, but I would have called their bluff and to see. And, if not, then Reeves is playing with Victor. Maybe he's not that star, like superstar guard that you've talked about, Sam, but he's pretty darn good. And I still hold a lot of stock in that. Like, I think even the Lakers right now, today, I had this conversation with somebody. They should put the ball in Austin Reeves' hands more when LeBron is not on the floor.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Austin Reeves is fantastic, and having him on this deal. This is why, when we talked about, should they look to move D'Angelo Russell or should they look to move, Austin Reeves to try and get a star? The conversation was always, no, like, you don't move Austin Reeves over D'Angelo Russell. Like, even if you are somebody that thinks D'Angelo Russell's a better player than Austin Reeves, D'Angelo has a player option for this year. And if he is as good as Austin Reeves is, which again, I disagree with, but like, whatever, if he is as good as Austin Reeves is, then he's going to decline that player option. So he's going to hit free agency, and it's not that valuable of a deal. So having Austin Reeves locked into this number is just crazy, crazy, crazy valuable, in my opinion. The Lakers are in an interesting position moving forward, but we'll see what they're able to kind of bring together.
Yep.
Okay. The tops, this is like a tier break for me now. The top 6 are kind of the top 6 to me. I had them in kind of 3 groups within that group. I had like legitimate all-stars, like near the top, guys that like can be all-stars if things go right. And then the guys that have had all-star-ish value this season, but only have 1 year left on their deals. So at number 6, I had Derek White.
Okay.
And Derek White, based on the value of just like having him for next year alone, if we were only doing this based off of this year and next year, I think would probably be number 3 or so. But only having 1 year in comparison to some of these other guys that have longer term deals still was a bit of a value drop. Having said that, Derek White has 17.6 million left on this deal, 18.8 million for next year. He has been utterly fantastic on both ends of the court for Boston this season. He has been one of the better guard defenders in the league, would be a real all defense team candidate. I don't know if he would quite get on my team personally, but very much a candidate. 15 points, 5 assists per game, 4 rebounds, 40% from 3, 47% from the field. Everything is just so sharp and efficient that it's like really, really hard for me to like find fault in his game almost.
Yeah, I mean, you said the efficiency is what's crazy. 47, 40, 90 from the field, rebounds a little bit, can create a little bit, doesn't turn the ball over, Sam. Never in his career has he averaged 2 turnovers a game, 1.3 for his entire career. There was a game I watched, it just, his impact was all over the start of the game. He attacks the lane with the ball in his hand. He cuts into the lane off the ball. Like, again, we talk about like versatility. So he can play with ball in hand, but he knows how to play off the ball. So he cuts into the lane, collapses the defense, gets a kick out there, gets a block shot, recovering on the ball. So if he gets like one of the, maybe the best guard shot blocker in the NBA. Like we talked about how good Reed Shepherd is contesting jump shots and all that. Derek White is one of those guys that as a guard is a really good shot blocker, averaging over 1 per game this season. And, can really get buckets when this team needs him. So, yeah, if it wasn't for just the 1 year left on the contract, he couldn't get all the way to number 1. But like you said, there's a real argument for the top 3.
I think that's right. I think Derek White has been unbelievable this season. And I'm a huge, huge fan and always have been. Like I had Derek White, like I didn't quite have him as a lottery pick, but I had him at like 15 or 16 on my board when he came out. Like everything that guy does just impacts winning basketball and always has. Number 5, Lauri Markkanen. Again, if Lauri was signed beyond this year, very clearly a top 3 guy on this list. I don't really think it's all that close. He's averaging 23 points per game, 8 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 48% from the field, 40% from 3. He's a genuine offensive star in the NBA. He is signed to a deal for $17.3 million this year, and he has $18 million next year. That's only like a partial guarantee, hilariously. Yeah. The reason that I put him a little bit lower here is I am assuming, and maybe this assumption is wrong, but I am assuming that Utah is going to use some of its cap space this summer to renegotiate that number.
Makes sense.
In 2024-25 up. So I gave him honestly like a bit of a drop in terms of value because of that situation. What are your thoughts on Lauri's game in general?
Yeah, I'll just say I had him higher because I didn't really consider that as much. But yeah, I think he's extremely versatile in terms of the position he can play. Again, I love to take that into account, especially when we're talking contracts and value. I think that becomes even more a part of the equation. What I like is he can shoot, but he can do it off movement. He can do it in multiple play types, but he can also get off the bounce. There was a game, he has this just crazy baseline. I call it whip pass, where it's along the side of your body, a baseline hammer whip pass, multiple nice passes in that game. I don't know that he's like great defensively, but again, whenever there's versatility, I think that adds at least a little bit of value. Dribble, pass, shoot guys. What did I see? The most made threes by someone 7 foot or taller in the NBA this season. A little more, athletic than what you would probably give him credit for. Like straight up,
they like play him on the wing a lot of the time. Like it's pretty wild.
He's just so darn skilled, Sam. He's just so skilled, and like I don't think I know last year was kind of his coming out party. I get that. I understand it. I don't think I realized how skilled he was overall until I really started diving into games this year when I started doing the pod with you.
Yeah, it's just that he is so capable of creating shots off of movement. He doesn't need the ball to create shots. He shoots over the top of guys with real ease. And then he has that like mismatch post game where like he'll take guys onto the block and just finish over the top. And it's like, well, okay, so I can't stop him that way. I can't stop him just like creating shots off of movement for 3. I will say in general, like, I wonder how much he is like a creation of the Will Hardy offense, which is, I think, the world of Will Hardy as a coach. he really puts Lowry in like the pristine prime position to succeed. And I wonder what he would look like as like a scaled down number 2 option, as opposed to being like the clear number 1. And I don't think he's good enough to like be a number 1 that wins a title. But I also don't know that it totally matters. Like Lowry is just like so good, and he is good enough off the ball that I think it probably works in this offense as a scaled down number 2. And he's going to be in this offense, I'm assuming, for the next portion of his career. But like the context piece of it is interesting to try and determine.
Well, it's going to matter someday, though, Sam, right? Like Utah's in a rebuild right now, but eventually they're going to want to start competing again. And you're right. I don't think Lowry is necessarily your number 1 superstar on like a deep playoff contender. And so I think it will be interesting to see. I tend to believe that he will be able to scale into that number 2 role because of what you said about how much he's able to do off the ball. So he doesn't need the ball in his hands. I think he will play off of another star really well. And he has some, again, position versatility, which just makes those type of things even easier. So I think that's absolutely fair context. If we go back to Kobe White, that's a thing with him, right? Like this is a great contract for a guy averaging 20 a game. It's a really good contract if you can be a, off the bench, big time scorer at that money too, right? So it's like, what does some of this stuff look like in different roles, in different contexts? So I think it's an interesting point, and I'm excited whenever we get a chance to see it.
I am too. I think it's going to be a really fun, really fun thing to track with Utah because I think they're a good team. Okay. Number 4, Jared Allen for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Larry Markkanen's a better player than Jared Allen, undeniably. But Jared Allen is locked in at $20 million this year, $20 million next year in 2024-25, and $20 million in 2025-26. Those are no options, though. That's just where he's at. Jared Allen is averaging 16 points, 10 rebounds, shooting 64% from the field. He's one of the best defensive centers in the league. Jared Allen has really emerged into the point where, like, I think that if they decided they had to make a choice between Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, it's not like a no-brainer. I think it would still be Mobley. Like, let's be very clear about that. And I think you would take the flyer on the upside of what Evan Mobley can be down the road with his ability to potentially create shots, potentially do some things on the ball, and hopefully improve as a shooter. But Jared is so good in his role as a rim protector, as a play finisher at the basket, as a pick and roll partner for either Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland, that you at least have to stop and think about it, given what his contract is.
Yeah, when you figure in the money, I'm glad you talked about like the pick and roll partner because as I've watched him throughout the season, he has a little more finesse than I was giving him credit for, just along with the size, movement, play finishing, all of that. He's averaging almost 3 assists per game this season. And I know this is a little bit nerdy, but I feel like this is the spot to do it. I love like next time you watch a Cavs game, which I will watch tonight as they play the Pistons, or I'll probably watch it first thing in the morning. But his hand placement and ball screen coverages. So like when he's in drop, I always love like watch him versus a young Jalen Duren and watch where they have their hands when the opposing team is running a ball screen. I feel like Jared Allen is very good trying to get his hand in that pocket passing window or getting it up if he thinks he's about to throw the lob. I just think Jared Allen is very good and very strategic and deliberate with his hand placement. And it's something I've learned to watch with bigs more and more. And I think he's one that does it really well.
Yeah, no, I think the world of what Jared Allen is capable of. And, when we did our mid-season awards with Andrew Schlecht, I had him as a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
He, to me, has been the main cog in terms of how Cleveland has been able to hold up a top, realistically, it's been a top, 5 defense throughout the course of basically the whole season. So I've loved what I've seen from Jared Allen. I think Jared is a phenomenal basketball player that frankly, like might be the most underrated player in the league right now. Like if you wanted to make a case for that, I think there's a very real case that is like open to discussion on it.
Yeah, no, I mean he definitely is not talked about as much as he should be.
Okay. Number 3, Mikal Bridges. The reason that I went Mikal Bridges, who has 21.7 million this year, 23.3 million next year, 24.9 million in 2025-26 over Jarrett Allen was almost entirely just like playoff performance at this point within semi-commensurate roles within their, schemes. So Mikal Bridges in Phoenix was their, fourth option, depending on who was on the court. Sometimes was the third option, depending on, DeAndre Ayton as well and what he had going that night. He consistently made shots and consistently defended at an exceedingly high level. He is a all defense guy. He hasn't been quite as good defensively this season in Brooklyn, but I think that's more due to the offensive load that he's carrying.
Yep.
Offensively, he's averaging 21 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He's shown that at the very least that when he's asked to scale down again and no longer be a number 1 option, he can run ball screens. He can run certain actions. He always showed flashes of that in Phoenix, but I think he can be a real like number 2, exceedingly high end number 3 on a great team. And these numbers are just bargain basement for what he is. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league when he's asked to do so because he's so long and so active. And he's a real shooter from distance. Like, this is the exact guy that you want to be able to have as your essentially like third guy. And at those prices, like, you can price him in as a third guy.
Well, and Sam, he plays every single game and he plays 30 minutes a night. So, we've talked at times about this, more so when we were talking about MVP award stuff in terms of availability and how many games and minutes and percentage of the season. Like, you can essentially mark it down that Mikal Bridges is going to play 100% of the season. Like, the dude has played more straight games. Like, I think, assuming it's still going, has played 400 straight games, and next best player was like somewhere in the 200. So this dude is available along with everything you're talking about in terms of his talent. I'm glad you brought up the defense kind of scaling back. We talked about that earlier with Dylan Jones. Like, when you take more of an offensive load, and quite frankly, Sam, I think we would both agree, an offensive load that he's not really ready for, or I don't think we ever think like that's not that's not what he needs to be. He shouldn't be a number 1 option. Yeah. That's not where he's his best. His best is like bottom end number 2, high end number 3, where then he can exert a whole lot more energy on the defensive end. And I think even in that role, this contract is an absolute steal if that's who he is on your team, because we know how good the defense can be along with being that on the offensive end. So yeah, I'm fine with him being here. I had him a tad lower, but essentially our top 6 is going to end up being the same. Our top 2 are going to be the same too. These 3 through 6 would have been mixed around just a tad.
Yep. Number 2 is Jalen Brunson.
Oh, okay.
The only reason Jalen Brunson is number 2 is because of the contract length. 26 million this year, 25 million next year. He has a player option for 2025-26 at 25 million. There's no way that's getting picked up.
No way.
Jalen Brunson is an all NBA guard this year, point blank. He's averaging 27.7 points, 3.8 rebounds, 6.7 assists per game, 48% from the field, 41% or 40.1% from 3. The issue is that he is just so good. He's so good. He is an unbelievable offensive creator. He is incredible. He is a legitimate number 2 option on a great team, and he's a number 1 option for the Knicks this year on a team that is probably going to win 50 games, and we'll see what they look like in the playoffs. Like, I think they could make a run against certain teams if they get the right matchups in the playoffs. Again, the only reason he's not number 1 is the contract to me. The length of the deal is just a little bit shorter than the guy that's at number 1, and that pushed it over the top for me. I think ideally both of these guys are, number 2 options on a title contending team. And I think Jalen's going to scale exceedingly well to that. And I think that this other guy, will scale well to that. But Jalen this year has been better than that guy. And Jalen this year is an all NBA talent, and he will be on a max contract very, very soon.
I had him at number 1. I just feel like Brunson's probably is he a top 10 MVP?
Probably.
I mean, obviously
Probably.
not top 5, but, at the back end of that. Um, on this contract, it actually goes down next year. You're right, the length, I get it. He's so crafty. He's skilled along with the strength. We talk about players' deceleration all the time, Sam. He has it as well. He's able to decelerate, and then his balance is unreal. And then somebody said it in the chat, like his leadership, his intangibles. Watched the game recently. They're playing the Pistons. Game was way closer than it should be, but whatever. But he makes a hustle play where, like, this young Pistons team who only has 8 wins, nobody dives on the floor for this ball. And Jalen Brunson comes out of nowhere, dives on the floor, saves it for his team, ends up in DiVincenzo's hands in the corner. He knocks it down, and it's actually stopped a run that the Pistons were going on. Like, he's still, I like kind of like the phrase of like, have like this unwavering confidence and like almost an arrogant confidence in your skill level, but a humble approach to all the little things. I think that's what
Yep.
Jalen Brunson has. Like, that's one of the favorite things. Like, some of the players I talk to is unwavering, arrogant confidence in your skill level, Sam. That's what I want players to have. But when they get there, I want them to be humble about their requirements to do the little things. I think Jalen Brunson still has that. And that's why I really enjoy watching him play.
I think that's absolutely right. I love watching Jalen. I love his craftiness. His footwork obviously is incredible. Somebody who is that small and like non-explosive just should not be as good of a finisher and as good in the paint as Jalen Brunson is. He's unbelievable at it. He's worked through the jumper at a really high level. I think that he has the most immaculate understanding of like spatial awareness
Yeah.
and like leverage that any player has in the league outside of maybe like Nikola Jokic and maybe Luka. He just completely gets what's around him. He completely gets how to operate within those infrastructure. He's just so unbelievable. He's so good in space that it's incredible.
Yep. He is really good. And I'm telling you this. I hope this Knicks team gets healthy, and I'm fascinated to see what they do in the playoffs if they are, because I think, I don't know that they're a real threat to the Celtics, but I think they're a real threat to anybody else in the East. The Bucks are figuring it out. I think they've won 4 straight or 5, something like that. They're figuring it out a little bit, but if they're not healthy, it's probably not going to matter as much. And the Randall injury is sounding concerning to me. But if they're not healthy, it would have been fun to see how they could challenge some of these teams.
Number 1 is Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson this year has been pushed into like an offensive role, like way beyond what he should be, to be clear. Jaren Jackson is the best defensive player in the league under the current rule structure, in my opinion. It's either him or Anthony Davis, or, you could name 1 or 2 other guys. This Memphis season has completely and utterly gone off of the rails entirely. Just due to injury, right? They are still somehow a top 10 defensive team in the league. I don't understand how that's even plausible. And then you realize they have Jaren Jackson on their team. They should not be able to make it work on that end. Like, truly. But because of his presence, he is just always available, always there. 27.1 million this season, and then it descends. 25 million in 2024-25, 23.4 million in 2025-26. He covers an immense amount of ground. He's a great weak side rim protector. Across the board, just as a shooter as well. Like, I know that the shooting is down a little bit this year because he's being asked to take really, really hard ones, but as a shooter off of movement, you can run him off of crazy actions. You can do all sorts of different things with Jaren Jackson Jr. The two-way ability makes him quite literally the perfect scalable number 2, number 3 option for a team. Jaren Jackson ended up at number 1 for me purely because he has the extra year at 23.4 million on his deal versus Jalen Brunson, who does not.
I mean, you said it. The fact that he's doing this defensively with the infrastructure around him, which there's some good defensive players, right? We talked about Vince Williams earlier being a good defensive player, but what he's having to do offensively, Sam. This is a guy
Mhm.
who, through the first 4 or 5 years of his NBA career, never averaged more than 13.3 attempts a game, over 17 this year. His three-point attempts are second most of his career. His free throw attempts, by far the most of his career, and he's over 80%. 45% from the field, not great, but 33% from the field, from three, not great, but he's having to take a lot of shots that he probably wouldn't have to otherwise. But I kind of like it. I kind of like seeing it. I've watched games and I've come away thinking, okay, he looks kind of comfortable in this role, and he looked confident, was relentlessly attacking the paint. It wasn't just the threes, had a nice little left hand push floater. And so it's like, okay, he can take this, scale it back whenever Ja and Desmond Bain come back, but you can still have him there when Desmond's having an off night and like, hey, we can go to Jaren to be the second option tonight, or whatever it is. And then he's anchoring the defense like you're talking about. With this offensive usage, he's going to feel like he has all sorts of energy whenever he's not having to do all of this on the offensive end. So playing the most minutes of his career as well. So I don't have a whole lot of qualms here. Again, I just gave Brunson the benefit of the doubt because he was the better player this season, but I completely understand with this descending and the length, it makes sense.
All right. That's the top 10. That's where we're at. I have one final trivia question for you, Bryce.
No, thank you.
While we're here.
No, thank you.
Because this tweet just completely broke my brain. Currently, DePaul has 3 NBA players compared to Illinois' 1, in Northwestern, Loyola, and the other teams in Chicago, UIC, Chicago State, etc., have 0. Shout out Ricky O'Donnell from over at SB Nation. We have to get Ricky back on the show again soon. Can you name the 3 DePaul players currently in the NBA?
No.
Come on. One of them is a game theory favorite. Bryce.
So I used to be really good at this game when I played a bunch of 2K, and we used to play this game in college on road trips whenever I was a player. Since I got out and before I started doing this with you and NBA draft stuff, I've realized how much I've fallen short.
Okay. The key here is Max Strus went to DePaul. A game theory icon.
Okay.
Max Strus.
Gotcha. So that's the one I should have known.
The second one is Paul Reed.
Okay.
And the third one just signed. Javon Freeman Liberty.
Oh, nice.
Shout out Javon Freeman Liberty. Little fun player who really worked his, tail off to get to the NBA. And was one of the best players, I thought, last year at Summer League. We talked about him, I think, during Summer League. Maybe Adam and I did. But it's insane to me that DePaul has 3 NBA players. And Illinois has 1. It's Ayo Dosunmu. We could sort of count Pods.
I was going to say,
but I don't know if Pods wants to count Pods as an Illinois guy.
I think he will rep Santa Clara very proudly with that one.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Pods will rep Santa Clara. The final thing I want to finish on real quick. Charlotte Stepp asked a question at the top. How do we feel about Jalen Galloway signing a 2-way deal from his perspective? You've talked about the NBA is a good place for development. He's still young, so is this a big risk? No, I think that Jalen Galloway signing a 2-way deal with the Milwaukee Bucks is the right decision for Jalen Galloway, and I think it's the right decision for the Bucks. I think it makes all the sense in the world to me that this is the next like natural progressive step in his career. He's a really, really good defensive prospect who does a great job of defending on the ball, keeping active off the ball, making his presence known, but he needs to improve as a shooter. Like that's the way he's going to stick in the NBA. Can he be a high enough level shooter to become like a 3-and-D guy at the next level? We will see if that can occur. But I think that a two-way deal is the right natural step. Now, like, do I have qualms about him maybe doing it with Milwaukee? I do, because I think there's no way that Doc Rivers will ever like play younger players. Like, we just have a prime example of this. Also, there are guys like Marjon Beauchamp and Andre Jackson ahead of him in this role. But I think Jalen is probably like a year or two away from really being able to play in an NBA game at a high level. So I like the idea of a 2-year two-way for him. He'll get guaranteed money, I'm sure. He probably got the 80 grand guaranteed for next season that he'll get. He'll make whatever it is this season. I think it's probably 150 or so beyond that for this season. So he got very real money, all in US dollars comparatively to making Australian dollars, which is a win for him. So all of this, I think, just makes sense across the board. You've watched a bit of Galloway. Do you have any strong takes on this, Bryce?
No, like I was always a fan of Galloway. I told you whenever this kind of came up that, I turned on Sydney to watch Alex Tui. And I told you, usually whenever I turn a game on to watch a player, nobody else catches my attention. Like I am locked in on that person. And like people will ask me, oh, what'd you think about so and so? Like, what'd you think about Kobe Brea from Dayton? I'm like, I don't know. I was like literally only watching Deron Holmes when I was watching that game. And so it immediately took me like, man, this Jalen Galloway guy just like keeps showing up and he keeps showing up, and the athleticism and the defense. Every once in a while, there'd be some interesting, fluid and smooth offensive things. He would make a shot. But yeah, I mean, I had it right here in my notes. I haven't watched a whole bunch of them recently, but shooting and playmaking are going to be the question marks. And not even the playmaking probably at this point, just can he space the floor with what he does defensively? But we texted about this the other day. I said, Detroit, I mean, they just opened a roster spot with Muscala, move somebody up and bring Galloway in as a two-way. Like I think that would have been awesome in terms of a flyer for the Pistons. Is it what's best for Jalen Galloway? That's a whole nother conversation developmentally. But
I think yes, for what it's worth, but like,
there's a chance to minutes, right? Like they're not great on the wing, that they're not super deep there. So maybe there's a chance to minutes and all of that. So I think this is absolutely a nice move by the Bucks. I'm a fan and I'm really interested to follow it moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's a smart move. Steve-O asked, the Sydney Kings released Mahmoud Abdul Fattah, who was their head coach this year. Will he make his way back to the NBA? He was the Rio Grande Valley coach. I think he might have done a year on Houston's bench, if I remember correctly, as well. Yeah, he did do a year last year on Houston's bench. That's correct. Look, like I understand firing Mahmoud. I think he might end up back in the NBA. The thing I will say just generally is I did see some like reporting about Mahmoud that like I didn't love. Like it kind of put a lot of Sydney's problems at his feet and kind of questioned a little bit. Like, is he a good guy? Is he this? Like, was he like a piece of the problem? Like, look, if you're firing a coach after a year, he's a piece of the problem. I thought that he was probably a little bit too inflexible in terms of not being willing to go away from the switching defense. And I also think that I just like didn't love their roster construction this year at the end of the day. Defensively, like having Denzel Valentine and DJ Hogue as real import level players, I thought was a real problem. But what I'll say is this, like Mahmoud Abdul Fattah is like an unbelievable human being. You will not meet like a kinder, like just more positive person than Mahmoud. And I didn't love some of the reporting that I felt like was toned in a way like toward creating like a bit of a negative impression of him. And like I thought ESPN's story for people that are in Australia, like I thought Olgan did a really good job kind of outlining it. I'm kind of talking about like a few others that I didn't love, but like Mahmoud is like a really, really good dude. And it just like didn't work out at Sydney. Like anybody across the NBA, across the NBL that like has gotten to know him at all, like he's definitely not, it's definitely not like he's a bad dude or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't. This isn't NBL's your world.
Yeah, this is NBL talk with Sam real quick.
I mean, NBL draft prospects all over it. Not as much into coaches.
Yeah. And shout out Brian Garces for the super chat
Oh, yeah,
in the
here we
middle
go.
of our
Yeah.
in the middle of our best contracts thing. He's going to take some time to guess who the top
Oh,
6
I
are.
thought he
wanted
was
to go
gonna.
watch the Celtics Mavs game.
I
He's not
like
asking questions.
no.
Just shout out Brian in the comments.
Hey, appreciate it for real. I thought he was asking us to put the top 6 like in the, and then I saw Mavs, and so I thought he was gonna ask like our top 6 teams in the league. So, made my life easier because I saw it, thought we needed to do it, and then I forgot to do it. So.
No, we definitely didn't have to do that. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, so at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, follow for Pistons, NBA draft content. Again, I started a Substack, motorcityhoops.substack.com. Pistons game breakdowns and then some raw notes, scouting reports that I've been dropping. So some NBA draft stuff over there. And then the Pistons Pulse, if you want to listen to a Pistons podcast. And then here at Game Theory with Sam.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. We will be back on Sunday or Monday. Not sure which day yet. Bryce, do you have an answer to that for me?
Sunday is fine if that's what you would like. I have no preference either way, but Sunday absolutely works.
Okay, we'll figure that out based on what my schedule is then. Wow, we get to adjust to Sam at this point. This is great. Okay, this has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe, do everything you can to support the show. We will be back at some point in the next, 48 to 72 hours. Until next time, we'll talk soon.